Good morning, everyone. This is Craig Harper with the Rogue River Watershed Council. I am partially retired, but I'm working part-time for the Watershed Council and previously worked for the Medford Water Commission. So I'm familiar with drinking water and with both of our speakers this morning. So I'm proud to introduce my fellow Rogue River Watershed Council employee, John Speece, who will talk about the Rogue Drinking Water Partnership. John is the coordinator of the Rogue Drinking Water Partnership, which he'll explain is a coalition of a lot of drinking water providers and other organizations interested in drinking water in the Rogue Basin. John's project manager with the Rogue River Watershed Council and has been with the Watershed Council since 2018 and has over 25 years of natural resource experience. He graduated from Southern Oregon University with an undergraduate degree in environmental studies and biology, and from Oregon State with a master's in natural resources. John, take it from there.
All right, let's make sure I can figure this out here. This should work. Are you guys seeing that?
Not this
Hello?
time, but last time, the second time you did it, it worked. So let's hope for that.
Oh, that did not work. Okay, let's try this again. What about now?
Nope.
Interesting. Let's try this again.
Jill, do you want to pull it up or I can pull it up? Oh,
Did that go?
it looks like maybe it did. Yes. Love it.
All right, there we go. Technology. Let me minimize this here. Okay. Okay. Well, thank you, Craig, for that introduction. And for the invitation to speak this morning with Inland Rogue Water Resiliency Group. Again, as Craig mentioned, I'm the coordinator of the Rogue Drinking Water Partnership. And, actually, that's a kind of a collaborative effort amongst a few folks. So I can't take all the credit for that over many years. Craig, RB Cog, and others are instrumental in that. Oh, interesting. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the RDWP, some background about the Inland Rogue in general. And then, are you guys seeing the notes page or the full page?
The full page.
Okay, that's good. So, as we know, the Rogue River originates from the western slopes of the Cascade Mountains before flowing over 200 miles across Very Terrain and emptying into the Pacific Ocean at Gold Beach. The Inland Rogue region from Grants Pass to the headwaters is roughly 2,500 square miles through parts of Josephine and Jackson County. Both of those have a distinct demographic and cultural landscape shaped by the indigenous history and ever-evolving socioeconomic factors. Combined population of those counties is over 300,000. Of that, over 200,000 of those residents are served by municipal drinking water utilities. Municipal water use throughout the Inland Rogue region, about 5 to 10% of total surface water withdrawal is for municipal water use. And as we see consistently across the globe, the majority of water withdrawal is used for agriculture. And in the Inland Rogue, that accounts for 85 to 90% of surface water withdrawal. However, that does not include groundwater or in-stream uses. In Jackson County alone, over 50,000 people receive their drinking water through their own surface water intakes or groundwater withdrawals. And when we think about future population predictions, we know that water consumption is going to rise as well. So making protection of source waters increasingly important. Oregon's Drinking Water Source Protection Program was developed during the early 90s and approved by the EPA in 1996. And source water protection is just that. It's the voluntary development and implementation of strategies to protect the raw water sources. So in this map here, I highlight a few key partners and drinking water providers. Medford Water Commission, who draws water from Big Butte Springs and Arlo. We'll talk about that in the next presentation. Other key providers that are partners in the RDWP, City of Grants Pass, Ashland, and then the City of Rogue River and Gold Hill. I also highlight up around Shady Cove, Country View Mobile Home Estates, and Anglers Cove. And again, the Rogue Valley contains numerous larger public water systems that share interconnected source water challenges. However, many small systems that I pointed out last lie within the surface water protection area of these public water systems that take water off the Rogue River, for example. And source water protection actions taken for one system can provide direct and indirect benefits to others. There is significant overlap in risk and priorities, making collaboration like this partnership essential so that technical expertise, planning resources, and on-the-ground efforts can be used more efficiently and effectively across the region. Small public water systems, however, face the significant capacity limitations. Many lack the staff, technical background, or administrative support needed to apply for and manage grants, implement large source water protection measures, or participate in regional initiatives, again emphasizing the need for a collaborative approach to administering this type of work. Pardon me. Historically, Oregon has been a leader in drinking water-related partnerships throughout the nation. We look to partnerships like the Clackamas River Water Providers up north and Eugene Water and Electric Board as examples for the RDWP. As Craig mentioned, the RDWP is comprised of drinking water providers and other organizations and key interest groups representing a wide set of water-related natural resource sectors and perspectives, including cities, conservation-based organizations, and nonprofit groups, and other water quality interests, many of who on the screen you saw attending this today. The overall goal of the RDWP is to protect sources of drinking water and improve drinking water quality in the Rogue River Basin by sustaining a collaborative partnership of providers and other organizations concerned with drinking water. Protecting the quality and quantity of our sources of drinking water, we know not only protects public health and reduces the complexity and expense of treatments, but also benefits nature and primarily aquatic and riparian systems I'm thinking about. So the RDWP meets quarterly to share information, determine ways to effectively collaborate on mutually beneficial projects, and discuss technical needs of partnering organizations. The vision statement and statements are on the left there in the bulleted points. And the active list of drinking water providers is highlighted here on the right. And I will say, as I mentioned earlier, these are some of the larger public water systems. There are numerous small water systems throughout the Rogue Drinking Water Partnership and Inner Rogue area. RDWP members include the water providers listed here, conservation organizations, municipalities, state and federal agencies, and others that have a vested interest in source water protection. So this is a list of some projects the RDWP has been directly involved with, either as project managing or providing technical assistance or support in some other capacity. These projects, the total amount of grants awarded to do these projects was about $500,000. However, the deliverables of those and the projects they provided to the drinking water providers provided much more greater value than that dollar amount I just mentioned. One project in particular I'd like to point out here is the Rogue National Water Quality Initiative that has a year there of 2021. We actually started that in 2019. The National Water Quality Initiative is a program, a partnership with the EPA, Natural Resources Conservation Service, Oregon DEQ, and others. And the RDWP was encouraged to apply for a planning grant with the NRCS, and the Rogue River Watershed Council did that. We were awarded $125,000 to prepare this large-scale basin-wide plan that ultimately ended up bringing in 1.5 million, I think. Jill could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's what's been awarded for agricultural BMPs to improve water quality in the Medford Water Commission's source water protection area. So the Watershed Council was the applicant. The Rogue Valley Council of Governments and the Medford Water Commission drafted the plan, and the Jackson Soil and Water Conservation District developed the agricultural BMPs that would be put on the ground, and they'll be the lead implementer when that comes down. And as I mentioned also, the RDWP also supports our partners' good projects that they're developing. That can be through capacity, technical assistance, or just offering up letters of support that we did, for example, for Gold Hill for a $1.5 million request, and also to Grants Pass for their $2 million request. Both of those projects were infrastructure-related projects for their drinking water. So the RDWP developed a memorandum of agreement in 2020. And part of that MOA was a 5-year course of action to complete. And one of those action items was developing an action plan framework to guide the future actions of the RDWP to put on the ground. That RDWP action plan identified measures that prevent, minimize, and mitigate activities that have harmful impacts on drinking water quality. It identified measures that promote public awareness and stewardship of drinking water sources and in other watersheds in collaboration with other stakeholders. And it developed a list of resources and sources of financial support for RDWP action plan implementation. And we're in the process of doing that. What you see on the second bullet there is there was a needs assessment that was completed as part of the action plan development. And the needs assessment ranked 3 broad types of assistance that drinking water providers found most important, with ranking them either high or medium priority. Drinking water providers and key partners identified monitoring and inspection as a high priority that they need assistance with. Emergency preparedness and response planning, and we're doing that right now. We developed a geographic response plan with Medford Water Commission that was completed last year. And we're launching into the Middle Rogue geographic response plan with cities of Grants Pass, Rogue River, and Gold Hill. And the Rogue Valley Council of Governments and the Rogue River Watershed Council and other key partners will be developing that. And then in bold there are partnerships and collaboration. That's where the RDWP can prevent capacity for these drinking water providers who lack in that capacity internally. So I want to highlight a key partnership here. Shameless plug for the Rogue River Watershed Council and Medford Water Commission. So a pivot here, I'm putting the Watershed Council hat on here for a couple slides. That is a map of our service area. It covers the middle and upper Rogue basins and largely coincides with the Inland Rogue drinking water source protection area. The Watershed Council, we've done the bulk of our on-the-ground work from Evans Creek upstream, and that's strategic. We purposely have worked in those key tributaries. We'll continue working others as we move forward with the council. At the Watershed Council, we develop, design, seek funding, and implement priority restoration projects throughout this geography. And we partner with key organizations to deliver impactful projects that improve water quality, improve riparian and complex aquatic habitat, and then also provide co-benefits for our drinking water provider partners. How do we do that? Well, in this example, Medford Water and the Watershed Council have a strong partnership. When Craig was with the Medford Water Commission and the Watershed Council was just kind of merging and forming in 2016, that's when this partnership really started. The Watershed Council provides technical support and expertise on restorative actions in the source water protection area. The mission of the Watershed Council is to enhance resilience in Rogue River watersheds for ecological restoration and engagement with community partners, and partnering in the RDWP aligns with this mission. Through our partnership with Medford Water, we identify strategic locations to implement priority process-based restorative actions that align with the overarching goal of source water protection. And Arlo will touch on that in his presentation coming up next. Through process-based restoration, we can impact surface water temperature, impact groundwater storage by encouraging stream interaction with the floodplains. The picture on the top there is actually a 50-acre riparian pasture to forest conversion that we're leading. We are 3 years or 4 years into implementation. It's about, I said 50 acres. That side channel on the left of the image there was reconnected, and that provides overwintering habitat for juvenile salmonids and other aquatic species. And we also encourage floodplain connection there. So at high flows, that water soaks into the floodplain and then releases in late season cooler water temperatures. So that's that process-based restoration, those points that I put there: large wood placement, side channel enhancement, riparian forest rehabilitation, and fish passage barrier removal. And that's just an image on the bottom there of a key contractor that we work with on this, installing a large wood project or a large wood structure at a project. And kind of lastly here, the Watershed Council hosts the official RDWP webpage. I tried to figure out how to embed that webpage into the Zoom presentation. That did not work so great. So I just have a screenshot here. It's the header of that Rogue Drinking Water Partnership page. We got a forest to tap radio button on the bottom left there. The protection radio button. Some literature about policy and water regulation in the United States, and some key regulatory bills that have been passed. And then the radio button on the far right there, where it says Your Water. An interested person could click on that, enter in their address, and an interactive map will pop up with some key information that tells the user where their water comes from, how many users are part of that system, etc. So I punched in 89 Alder Street, where our office is in Central Point, and this is what came up here. It's a municipal service provider serving approximately almost 19,000 people through 6,800 service connections. There's obviously quite a bit more than that, but so a user can do that and find out that information. I guess with that being said, I think that brings me up to the end here.
Anything else before we hear from Arlo? Okay. John,
I'm
you wanna?
going to introduce Arlo.
Yeah.
Yeah. So go Raiders. Also a fellow Southern Oregon University graduate. Many of us know Arlo. Arlo's been with the Medford Water Commission since 2017. He is now the watershed coordinator. Again, he's a graduate of SOU with a degree in environmental science and policy. And I will also say, on a personal level, a great lover of music and vinyl. Very well,
right.
Arlo.
Okay, so let me share my screen here. Thanks, John. Can everyone see my screen? Can everyone hear me okay?
We sure can.
Okay, well, that was a great primer for what I'm about to talk to as the watershed coordinator for Medford Water, and thank you for giving this opportunity to share Medford Water's source water protection program. We're going to talk about our sources and some highlights of our source water protection program. I know there was a question about what are our concerns, and we'll share some of those concerns as highlights because for the sake of time, we can't talk about all of them, but we do have a source water protection plan that really highlights almost all concerns. So with that, as John mentioned, I'm the watershed coordinator, and I'll just start with talking about the communities we serve. So Medford Water is the wholesale provider for almost the entire the drinking water provider for almost the entire Upper Rogue Basin. Obviously, we serve our direct customers in Medford and White City, but we also serve Central Point, Eagle Point, Jacksonville, Phoenix, Talent, and in many years, a backup source for Ashland. So that's 150,000 people or 170,000 people if you include Ashland. And we serve those under our visions and missions and values statement, which we have here on the left. And I'll just share our vision, which is to be the Rogue Valley's trusted municipal water provider for present and future generations through responsible stewardship, accountability, and the pursuit of excellence. And we have two sources of water. We have the Big Butte Springs, which is our primary source. It's a groundwater source and originates up in the mountains, the Cascades. You can see on this map here on the left, this is our Big Butte Springs source water protection area. So this is all the area that contributes to the flow of our Big Butte Springs, just west of Mount McLaughlin. And then our secondary source, which we use to meet demand as it grows in the spring, is the Rogue River. So our treatment plant is down here by Tuvale State Park or the base of Upper Table Rock, where we pull from the Rogue with our water treatment plant. And that is served by 1 million acres of essentially the Upper Rogue. So Little Butte Creek, Big Butte Creek, the Upper Rogue above Lost Creek, Trail Creek, and Elk Creek all flow into the Rogue above our treatment plant. And you can learn a lot about our sources and our water in general from two reports that we have online that we update annually, the Water Quality Report and our Consumer Confidence Report. So anyone interested in some details, you can just Google. It's the easiest way to find it, Medford Water Quality Report, and it'll come up for you. So our Big Butte Springs source, as I mentioned, it is a groundwater source and has been our source since 1927. It's located just east of Butte Falls at an elevation of 2,700 feet. And it is a spring that has filtered through miles of volcanic rock. So it is very pure, it is very cool, and requires minimal treatment and minimal pumping, and in a lot of scenarios, no pumping. And it flows by gravity 30 miles and two pipelines that were hand dug by men and mule about 100 years ago. And here's some really cool historic photos of the pipeline on the right and the original 1927 intake here on the left. And these pipelines enter the distribution area around the Coker Butte area. And as I mentioned, it's a groundwater source draining the western flank of Mount McLaughlin or the west side of the Cascades Divide. And this map right here represents the entire Big Butte Springs protection area, the 57,000 acres as delineated in a 1990 geologic hydro report that was conducted by the U.S. Forest Service as a majority landowner. And in this map, you can see our groundwater infiltration zones, which is a simplified, essentially soil survey map. And this pink zone is the high infiltration zone, where essentially any water that falls in here is almost completely infiltrated into the groundwater supply and is conducted downslope to our Big Butte Springs in less than 1 year. And this pink zone is essentially the most recent lava flows from Mount McLaughlin, about 110,000 years ago. And it's actually a series of lava flows, one after the other, that filled a valley that was once there with a stream running through it. And as those flows flowed over that stream, they cooled, quelched, and cracked and created this blocky rubble that allows for that complete infiltration and rapid infiltration. And because it was a series of small flows, once it infiltrates and becomes groundwater, it can find those interstitial flows or those pathways between the lava flows and travel downstream in the historic surface water channel that is now a groundwater channel. And then we have our moderate infiltration zones of 1 to 5 years represented in green. So your infiltration is moderate and the water takes longer. And oftentimes what it does is it's released more slowly to this high infiltration conduit zone. And then we have some areas of low infiltration that are millions of years old Western Cascade terrains where the soil is weathered and less infiltration. And then at our springs, what's essentially occurring is this is the end of the lava flows where the water flowing underground is meeting what's called an aquitard, and it's a layer of Western Cascades ash and soils that have been weathered for millions of years, and groundwater can no longer pass through those freely, so it emerges as spring water. And it's actually a system of 7 springs, which a total spring flow of 37 CFS to 60 CFS, depending on the water year. And forgive me, but I'm going to go back and forth between 1 million gallons a day and CFS and sometimes acre feet, and that's just the way it is in water resources. But this chart over here depicts our total spring flow organized by the water year, which starts in October and goes through end of September. And this dashed line is our average total spring flow, which usually starts around 47 CFS and peaks after summer rains and spring snow melt in May, around 52 CFS. But you can see it can be as low as 37 and as high as 60. And this dash line right here is where we're at this year. So down around 45 CFS, and that's because of the low precipitation. So of that total spring flow, we have a capacity to divert 26 million gallons a day or 40 CFS of that. And how our 2 pipelines work, we can essentially divert at 2 rates, 26 million gallons a day or 40 CFS, or we need to go to 1 full pipe and 1 half pipe of 20 million gallons a day or 30 CFS. At flow rates in between those 2 flows, we get air entrainment, which we try and avoid. So we can essentially just divert at those 2 flow rates. And spring flows have decreased in the past decade, especially that 5-year drought we just experienced. So our capacity has usually been around that 20 million gallons a day or 30 CFS, where this year being the first year for any significant time, we could operate at 26 million gallons a day. And that's our year-round source. We're using it all winter long, but as the demand increases in our shoulder seasons in spring and summer, we bring on the Duff Water Treatment Plant. It was built in 1968, where our demand was outpacing that 26 million gallons a day in our systems. And it pulls water from the Rogue at the base of Upper Table Rock, as I mentioned. The Rogue, being a surface water source, does require a lot more treatment. So our Big Butte Spring source, essentially, there's no filtration. We just have to chlorinate it for protection, and we use the minimal amount of chlorine possible. Whereas a surface water source requires a lot more elaborate treatment. So we treat it with ozone for taste and odor and harmful algal blooms. We have a flocculation sedimentation to drop out sediment, and then finally a advanced sand filtration and our disinfection. Our capacity at the Rogue River treatment plant has recently expanded from 45 million gallons a day to 65 million gallons a day, with some recent upgrades we've done to meet the ever-growing demand of the system. So here's a picture of our treatment intake structure on the Rogue River. And during the summer months during the operation periods when we're usually operating, the river at our intakes flowing around 1,500 to 2,500 CFS. And our average daily rate of diversion during those periods is around 32 CFS or 20 million gallons a day. But as I mentioned, our max production rate, or the max we can produce instantaneously, is now 65 million gallons a day or 100 CFS. And we're typically operating the Duff treatment plant from May to October, but recently it's been more like sometime in April, almost into November with drought conditions, and which is an increased demand on our operations. So in total, from both sources, at least instantaneously, we can produce 91 million gallons a day. But our average winter daily demand is only 15 million gallons a day. So that's with just household use, what people need to operate their houses, which is plenty to or low enough that we can have plenty of spring water, even at a reduced capacity of 20 million gallons a day to meet that just from the Big Butte Springs. But our annual daily demand is 30 million gallons a day. So that right there outpasses our max production from Big Butte Springs. And our peak summer daily demand is 52 million gallons a day. And our peak hourly demand for instantaneous in July and August, when everyone wakes up at 6 a.m., is 89 million gallons a day. Just for a brief period, but that's quite high, which is why we're expanding or we've upgraded our treatment plant. And so here is a chart that kind of outlines what our operations look like in a given calendar year. So starting in January, in this solid pink line right here, we have average max daily temp. Can you guys see my cursor, by the way? Great. So this is a 5-year average of what the max daily temp is on a given year. And then the shaded pink is what we're experiencing this year. So you can see in March, we had some peaks well above average in our max daily temperature. And if we look at our total system demand, 5-year average in this dotted line, you can see we're usually below 20 million gallons a day. These solid bars are, our 26 million gallons a day capacity of Big Butte Springs and our 20 million gallons a day reduced capacity of Big Butte Springs. So usually our total system demand in the dotted blue line is well below our 20 million gallons a day. And then usually in April or late April, early May, outpaces our Big Butte Springs capacity. But this year, our solid blue line, which is our total system demand this year, spiked with those temperatures. It spiked above our 20 million gallons a day capacity and almost reached our 26 million gallons a day capacity. And these bars are our Big Butte Springs production. So we were producing 20 million gallons a day. When we had that spike in demand with the air temperature, we went up to 26 million gallons a day. And soon we're going to be turning on our Duff treatment plant. In fact, we're commissioning it this week to meet this demand. And if you total that over a year, what you see, at least in these last 5 years where we've had a lot of drought years, about 2/3 of our water in total is coming from the Big Butte Springs, and about 1/3 is coming from the Rogue River. Last year in 2025, those numbers looked a little differently. Our total production was almost 11 billion gallons, or 10,938 million gallons. 8 billion of which came from the Big Butte Springs, and just under 3 billion came from the Rogue. So that's more like 75-25%, but that's because we had a good water year last year. And the demand for Rogue water is increasing, as can seen in this chart. So this is just percent of the water that came from the Rogue from 0 to 100. And you see in 1990, it was down around 10 and was peaking in those drought years, approaching 40%. And these bars that are above this trend line, these are drought years. And that's because of reduced capacity at the springs and also drought more demand. So those two combined, we end up with in 1992, 2015, 2020, 21, needing more water from the Rogue. And one other factor in our supplies and how we utilize them is Willow Lake Reservoir. So that is our reservoir that we operate. It was built in 1954 with a capacity of 8,320 acre feet, or 8,000 acre feet of usable storage with 320 acre feet of dead storage. So Big Butte Springs, as it would flow naturally, would enter Big Butte Creek. And Medford Water and Eagle Point Irrigation District actually share a priority date of water rights to Big Butte Creek. But after that priority date, we obtained future rights or further rights to Big Butte Springs and increased capacity. But essentially, when the flow or the natural flow of South Fork Big Butte Creek is lower than can evenly supply our shared water rights of 100 CFS to Eagle Point Irrigation District or 30 CFS to Medford Water. In order for us to utilize the Big Butte Springs, we need to release water from Willow Creek Reservoir so that our diversions do not harm Eagle Point Irrigation District. And so that allows us to fully utilize our Big Butte Springs source. And it also allows a lot of flexibility for Eagle Point Irrigation District, especially in these drought years, because it's storage of winter water that can be used when so low summer flows are occurring. And it's just a great example of Medford Water looking forward into the future because this has become an increasingly important supply. But if we look at how we are doing this year with the low flow, it's a little similar to other reservoirs. We are not sure if we're going to fill it. We still have our fingers crossed. And this is a little outdated. I updated this about a week ago. But we're currently at 75% capacity. And if you see in this chart right here, this light blue shaded area is the median lake level. So usually we're full, come February or March on average. But this year in the dash blue line, we're, under 80% full, and here we are, middle of April. But luckily, EPID and Medford Water do a really good job managing this reservoir. So we ended last year around 3,500 acre feet. So that's why we're doing better than we could be. And if you look at the 20-year minimum, when we ended irrigation season at below 2,000 acre feet, we were even lower than we are today. And this is all relates back to how much precipitation we're getting. So you're all aware that this is a below average water year. We're tracking the precipitation in the upper Rogue. We use USDA's cumulative precipitation charts to keep track of where we're at. So the black line is this year, where we're well below the average for the year. I think we're 76% of average, which is the green line. And we're trending kind of on a 2021 water year. So we're not as bad as we've seen in the past, but we're certainly well below average. And it's even worse for snowpack, as we're all familiar. So snow water equivalents, again, the black line, we're at the bare minimum. Way less than 2021, which has actually had some decent snowpack. And we're actually less than 2015, which is this blue line right here, which was considered a no snow year. So luckily, both these matter for spring flow in our Big Butte Spring source, but luckily, because it's a groundwater source with that infiltration and release, we do benefit from precipitation, and we're not totally reliant on snowpack. So this chart right here is average total spring flow, a period record from the 90s to today, plotted with precipitation, total precipitation. The thin blue lines are annual precipitation for a given water year, where the lighter blue bar is a 4-year weighted average. And both of those matter. So the precipitation for a given year kind of relates to how much our springs rebound from that slow decline from spring snowmelt. But really, the 4-year weighted average is determined of how sustained our spring flow will be. So let's take this water year, for example, 2021 water year. We had really low precipitation, below 20. That's measured at our Big Butte Spring source. But because our 4-year weighted average was pretty decent, we sustained pretty good spring flow. But if you look at that 5-year drought period, we just had essentially no rebound in spring flow because our precipitation was around 20, 22, 25, 30 is average at Big Butte Springs, by the way. And so we just kind of kept declining spring flows with no rebound. But last year, we had a really good water year. Our spring flows were back up above average. But here we are again this year, falling spring flows, and we're back around that level where we need to reduce capacity. We'll be forced to reduce our diversions from 26 to 20 million gallons a day, regardless of what Willow Lake Reservoir feels like. And the good news is that From analysis we've done, also some analysis that OSU has done for us, it looks like 20 million gallons a day, even with these precipitation events around 20 inches cumulatively, we can sustain that 20 million gallons a day. So that's still a abundance of cool, clean water that we are very fortunate to have. And with our increased capacity at the Rogue River Water Treatment Plant, we'll be able to provide the needs of the valley. So moving on to our source water protection plan, which I believe aligns with our visions, missions, and values to be, the responsible stewardship of our role of the drinking water provider. We have a protection plan that outlines how we protect those sources, both the quantity and quality of them. The plan includes a source water assessment that identifies the risks to our source water. It establishes priorities and strategies to address those risks and outlines an action plan. And I'll just share some recent highlights from last year from our Source Water Protection Act program. So from the risk analysis, we identified priorities. Like, what are our priorities that we're trying to do for source water protection? And part of that was the risks and our vulnerability. So this map right here is our source water area, and red is where we're most vulnerable. We're most vulnerable in the Big Butte Springs protection area because we have no filtration. We just have our disinfection. We're vulnerable in the Little Butte Creek protection area because Little Butte enters the Rogue right above our intake. We're moderately vulnerable below Lost Creek Reservoir because there is no large reservoir acting as a buffer between potential contaminants. And then we consider ourselves low vulnerability above Lost Creek Reservoir because that reservoir can really act as a buffer and detention on potential contaminants. So our priorities that we identified were spill and discharge prevention and emergency response, improving water quality in Little Butte Creek, reducing wildfire risk source water area wide, and increasing water availability in Big Butte Creek. And the strategies we use to address those are first and foremost partnerships and collaboration, land use best management practices, monitoring, outreach and education, and ecological restoration and protection. And partnerships and collaboration are the most important strategy by far. We are not a regulatory agency. We do not own most of the source water protection area besides the 3,700 acres around our springs and our reservoir. So we really rely on our partnerships. And we believe our role in these partnerships are to advocate for those priorities, lead by example when we have the opportunity to, and facilitate discussions and bring together networks like the Rogue Drinking Water Partnership, and then support our partners that we see as the experts in the given fields of a particular strategy or resource. We are here to provide drinking water, and we rely on the expertise of a lot of other organizations on protecting it. Whoops. And here's just some highlights that relate to those strategies. So as John mentioned, we developed a spill response protection program, or a geographic spill response plan. And this map right here has all the potential contaminant sources that are inventoried in our source water area. And first and foremost, spill prevention is number one. But when a spill happens, we want to be in the loop. So we want the phone to ring at our treatment plant operator's desk so we know what to do. So hopefully we can at least shut the plant down if we have the possibility. And then be prepared. And how we're doing that is we're engaging with our local emergency planning committee and our local Hazmat 8 team. And as John mentioned, we developed that geographic spill response plan that has specific sites where we can take action to protect our water resources. One of which is the treatment plant intake ourselves, which is this picture right here. So this is our treatment plant intake structure with some solid hard containment boom that we purchased with some grant funds. And essentially what we're trying to do here is protect our intake from contamination in a worst case scenario if a double tanker of diesel goes off the bridge in Shady Cove, for example. So through this development of the plan and some training and drills that we've been able to hold with some other funding from the State Fire Marshal's Office and the materials we were purchased through an OHA grant, we can now deploy this boom in less than an hour, protecting our intake from a petroleum product spill. And this has been a really fun and engaging plan and program to develop. So another priority I mentioned, improving water quality in Little Butte Creek. And as I mentioned, Little Butte Creek enters the rogue right above our intake, and it doesn't mix fully by the time it gets to our intake, as seen in this drone footage. So this is Little Butte Creek on the right entering the rogue. And this is worst case scenario. There was a landslide, and this is not what it usually looks like, but it really clearly depicts the lack of mixing. And so although it doesn't look like this, it always is more impaired than the rogue itself. And the water that's available on our intake, because we're on the same side of the river, is impaired. So we believe the best way to address this priority is through agricultural best management practices. And John mentioned the National Water Quality Initiative, which we are so thankful for. RRID and MID are doing great work up in this area with piping their canals so that there can be flood to sprinkler implementation by farms, and the Jackson Soil and Water Conservation District partnering with NRCS using this National Water Quality Initiative are helping farmers implement best management practices on their land. To increase the pace and scale of this work, Medford Water has entered into a 5-year IGA with the Jackson Soil and Water Conservation District to put Medford Water funds on top of those funds from the outside sources to help increase the pace and scale and get as much work done as possible. Things like fencing riparian zones, expanding the riparian buffer area. I mentioned flood to sprinkler conversion and a suite of parameters that the soil and water conservation districts and the irrigation districts are the experts in. And again, we just want to help facilitate it and support it. So the next priority is reducing wildfire risk. We're here in Southwest Oregon. Don't need to tell any of you that risk is high, but it's a common theme for a lot of drinking water providers across the West. And this map right here is our entire source water area with wildfire hazard mapped from moderate to high. And this is actually some kind of out of date data. And if we were to update this map with current data, I believe the scenario is even worse. And so we have open chain fire in this crosshatch pattern here. And I need to add Salt Creek. That was just to the southeast of it, both of which burned in our source water area and became within miles of our Big Butte Springs source and our Big Butte Springs protection area. Just in 2025, this map is the Big Butte Springs protection area with ignitions, these little red triangles in and surrounding the Big Butte Springs protection area. Luckily, the Forest Service and ODF did a great job of putting those out, but it just emphasizes how much we need to take wildfire risk reduction serious. So this is another opportunity Medford Water has to lead by example because we do own 3,700 acres surrounding our springs and our reservoir where we're implementing ecological forest management guided by our forest management plan. So we're using uneven age management. And what we're trying to do is use both mechanical selective logging through timber sales and understory mechanical treatments to make a more mosaic of forest types. So rather just one dense, even age forest that is susceptible to wildfire and drought disease, we want a forest of variable tree density that is in generally more open, so that is more fire, disease, and drought resistant with particular species that are more fire and disease and drought resistant, so that wildfire risk is reduced. And when we're doing these mechanical treatments, we're doing a lot of piling and burning so that we're not just increasing surface and ground fuels. And we're actually doing a pilot project with the Forest Service this year to do our first cross-boundary burn where the forest is going to do an underburn, taking it from federal lands across onto our lands as a pilot for a maintenance regime that we're trying to enter into because this mechanical thinning is expensive, where we can use our periodic selective logging and these underburns to maintain these more open forests. And so that speaks to our partnership with the Forest Service, which is the most important partner for wildfire risk reduction, at least in our source water areas, because they own the vast majority of our land. And we're happy to see that they have prioritized that with a Snowy Butte landscape restoration project that is currently under development and actually past development, nearing implementation phase that aims to treat over 20,000 acres in and surrounding the Big Butte Springs watershed, which is focused on wildfire risk reduction to protect the municipal source. Using those same treatments, looking for, in general, a variable density with more open forest that is not only fire and drought disease resistant, but also can help us address our next priority, which is increasing water availability at Big Butte Creek. So these landscape or watershed scale forest restoration strategies can help create a forest where we can have more snow accumulation and hopefully more groundwater infiltration, and which bolsters low base flows of both stream and our springs. But another way we can do that is through ecological restoration. So again, partnering with the experts, the Rogue River Watershed Council, we identified a number of locations on Medford water-owned land where we think ecological restoration can take some of our parcels that are not forested but are meadows or potentially wetlands and restore those to their natural condition. So partnering with the Watershed Council, we have applied for Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board funds to develop these projects. And for our technical assistance grants, we were ranked #1. So we will start developing these projects now and hopefully enter implementation phase in the next couple years. And here's just a couple pictures of one of the sites right here. We call this the Clark's Fork site. This is the winter. You can see there's a lot of water on the ground, but come late spring, early summer, this site is bone dry. And this picture on the left is our reference site, which is really just down the way on Medford water property. But you can see it's functioning at a higher level and it's storing a lot more water. So we'd like to restore this site to function more like this one, slow that winter water and release it slowly to bolster base flows in the summertime.
Hey, Arlo, I
Yep.
just want to note that we're getting into question time. I know you just have a couple slides yet left, but if you could summarize, that'd be great.
Great. So we have a robust monitoring program where we're keeping track of both water quality and quantity at our sources, including our tributaries. And looking forward into the future, an outreach and education program, participating in Salmon Watch, going to schools, and again, Source Water Protection Week with the Rogue Drinking Water Partnership, doing a media blitz to highlight these source water protection opportunities and strategies. And with that, I'll leave you with a drone footage of a stand that we've treated that surrounds a wetland and open it up to questions if we have time.